Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Chelsea Echo. Welcome to your penultimate episode of the 24-25 season and the final episode of Chelsea's Premier League campaign as they head away to Nottingham Forest to try and achieve all 3 points and secure Champions League football. It is myself, Lou Beneventi,
It's myself, Daniel Childs.
and we're here to give you everything you need to know about what is probably the second most stressful game of Chelsea's 4-24 is second stressful 24-25 season. I'd say it's probably it might be the most stressful. Dan, I don't know. What do you think? Is Road Claw going to be more stressful, or is this going to be more stressful?
Personally, it'll probably be more stressful. It's a final, right? It is stressful because the stakes are higher, trophies available. So yeah, it's the first of them. I can't tell you which has been more stressful till I've experienced both.
Yeah, that's true. We'll have to decide that afterwards. Actually, is it the last game of the season? What is the last game of our season?
We're going to clarify this, right? To me, I'm not having the season nonsense. To me, the season ends in Roclaw.
Mhm.
24-25 ends in Roclaw. Now, I will allow some discrepancy that the Club World Cup is kind of sort of a middle ground, but like it's sort of limbo between 24-25 and 25-26.
Yeah,
But it's not 24-25 to me. It's not. It's a bit like how you judge a World Cup, right? Like I don't think of a World Cup as being in the season that's just ended. It's kind of, as I say, it's a bit of a middle ground. It's kind of its own thing. I don't really categorize it. I think because it will be the new kit, Andre Santos will be there and some other players returning. I think it's more 25-26 than it is 24-25.
there you go. You heard it here first, and we are the voices of reason when it comes to Chelsea Football Club. So have that. First, though, we should probably get involved with some little bits of news. Obviously, the Donk report is coming up shortly, but there is one thing in the Donk report that hasn't been included, and that is obviously Trevor Chalobah being called up to the England squad because apparently he's good enough to do that. Mind blown, Dan. Can you believe? Can you believe that Trevor Chalobah's good enough to play for England?
I was told he was not technical enough to even play
Yeah,
for Chelsea last
yeah.
summer. So I don't know what Tommy T is smoking over there when he's picking his England lineups. I mean, I was told that yeah, not good enough for Chelsea, not technical enough. Should be banished, shouldn't even be allowed to train. So yeah, it just shows that Tommy T should know his role and shut his mouth.
Exactly, too right. But hey, what does he know about football, right? As well as that, by the way, it's interesting to see what Sky put out this morning, and I couldn't help but giggle. I saw Vince share it, and it was highly hilarious. And it was what me and you have been saying should be happening, and it has happened. Where when Stanley and Stewart have decided to compare us to PSG's project, so there's that as well, which is definitely something to take extremely seriously because Chelsea can be contending for titles next season. Definitely. Um, I had the displeasure of hearing Enzo Maresca moaning yesterday while I was on Talksport about the fact that Real Betis are going to have longer to prepare than we will, and all this sort of stuff. When realistically, Chelsea should be in a position where realistically it shouldn't be a problem. But that's another conversation for another day. And we'll obviously save that for the preview. Dan, is there any other housekeeping that we have to discuss?
I don't think so. I don't think anything else comes to mind. I think yeah, it's not been the most newsworthy week from a Chelsea perspective, has it? Other than that Trev news, actually today is probably the most notable thing that's happened.
Well, should we check the magical world of Twitter in case we miss something again? Because that always seems to happen whenever me and you do a pod. Every time me and Dan have done a pod, something happens. Um, but no, there's nothing here. Nothing. Just Enzo Maresca moaning again, which obviously we're going to talk a little bit about later. Um, but what we probably should do then, Dan, is just probably do the best show on the planet. What's it called, Dan? What do you want? Tell you what. Let's make it interesting. I'd like you to intro it this week.
Okay, to make things interesting, for Friday, the 23rd of May, 2025, which is when we're recording. I don't know if that's when the episode's been released, but that's the date it's being recorded. And that is the date that the Donk Report is being delivered to your ears. And yes, it is the one and only place you need to be for all the latest news around Stamford Bridge. It is the definitive article, it is the Holy Scripture, it is the manifest destiny of Chelsea Football Club. It is the Donk Report. I think that was a pretty good intro, actually.
But for their comfort, Mikel Arteta is reportedly in his 17th phase, where he said that he always wins something in his 15th season.
So Jim Ratcliffe was celebrating though as he got to cancel the work barbecue. Jim was seen strolling down to his local Argos, receipt in hand, to take back the Ninja he was forced to buy on the company credit card.
Universal's new theme park, Epic Universe, opened in Orlando this week. In it, visitors can travel to the world of monsters, through Paris, and see some mountains and space. This was reportedly inspired by the path Chelsea fans will take to get to Roadclaw next week.
That's true. We couldn't miss looking at the Eurovision Song Contest last weekend, however. Austria's JJ ended up winning the whole thing, though some consolation to Mikhailo Mudryk, who came ninth for Ukraine with his song I Got a Drug Test on Tuesday.
And finally, scandal in the US as the media uncovered how the Democrat Party had covered up the decline of Joe Biden. But being accused of gaslighting the American public, one of the most shocking parts of this report was that Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart took inspiration for this in the summer of 2024. And that was the Dunk Report.
Very nice, very nice, very nice.
Great stuff for the guys down at Dunk Report HQ. Big fan of that week ones. I thought it'd be interesting to see what the situation would be in regards to Mikhailo Mudryk and his song. Like, I reckon that's a little bit of like an I don't like cricket vibe. I got a drug test. Oh yeah. On Tuesday.
Did you see?
Oh yeah.
On Twitter, I've just remembered there was a thing. It was one of the first things I saw when I woke up this morning. Someone had posted that Esteval had scored a couple of goals last night, and I swear to God, the commentator sounded like when the goal went in. I tweeted about this. He sounded like he was going to start singing, "Hey hey baby, ooh." You got to listen to it. I swear, it's like almost like pitch perfect.
Do you want to pull it up?
I genuinely thought he was going to start singing.
Let's
We got to try and pull it up.
Hey, Jamie, can you pull it out for me? Have you ever tried
We're
DMT?
gonna try. But I don't know. Here's the big thing. I don't know whether we get to play audio on this, but we will try. But if not, I just suggest people go.
Well, sweet. Welcome to the Joe Rogan podcast. Sorry, that's a little bit too nasal. That's a bit more Kermit than Joe Rogan, wasn't it? Yes, hello, Miss Piggy.
Okay, we're doing the share screen.
So Dad's going to share his
Oh
screen
no,
on the
this is
Kermit
annoying.
podcast.
It's not.
Hey, Dad, can you
If
show Miss Piggy Esteval Williams goal?
I'm sending you the tweet, Louis, so you can.
Well, as the Chelsea Echo technical director, is this what I am now? Okay, let's see what we got.
I have to say, this is riveting radio for those of you listening out on the roads as you're traveling home from work today. It's the time is 12:29.
Big shout out to Dave, who is celebrating his 12th birthday, and this is "Hey Baby" by DJ Altzy. See, I think I'd be great on local radio. Like, I feel like we should have, like, you know how Alan Partridge has the big question? We should also have a big question every week. And I feel like we should put it out to the general public and the listeners. And we don't want it to be Chelsea related. We want something, people who understand and appreciate Alan Partridge. We want some big questions. Like, what is the stinkiest fish? Like, what do you think it is? And that stuff like that.
I have to say, didn't you come up with one at the Di Matteo event? You said it was, I'm pretty sure it was Chelsea players as teachers, and like what subject would the Chelsea players teach?
It's because Pat Nevin told everyone off, and he looked like an angry geography teacher.
Yeah, he looked like Pat Nevin did look like a teacher on that stage, having a go at the crowd, like telling him to shut up. So that's maybe one we should put on Twitter for the next episode.
Okay, absolutely, we'll do that. I think we need to get as many people involved with that as possible. Right, I've got the tweet here. Let's see if I can share the screen. Hang on. Let's go. Present.
Say as killing time goes,
Share
we've done quite a
screen.
good job.
Oh, mate, I'm proud of us. It's saying that I can't allow it, but we already know that I can do that anyway, so I'm going to do it anyway. So here we go. There's that. Share tab audio. There we go. Okay, here we go. Right, we got it. 3, 2, 1. Right, okay. So if we play the audio quickly on this. Okay.
Ele está insaciável. Vem de novo. É Estevão com pedalada, com disparo.
Hey, baby!
Baby. Ooh. Ah.
That has got to be his chart now. Hey, Esteval, Will,
Ooh.
Jan,
Ah.
I wanna know why the
I
fuck you're
scored that
here,
guy.
because I feel sorry
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. How much do you cost on amortization? That's going to be the rest of the lyric.
What's your amortization fee? All together now. Hey, Esteval, Willie,
Ooh. Ah.
Oh dear. Right, but anyway, that's that. That'll be good. So everyone's now heard. They've got a Brazilian commentator go, hey! I genuinely think I actually, so I don't ever tell you this, right? When we initially started Imperial Wharf, this is a tangent, which it does make sense, right? I actually didn't want it to do the commentary as me. I wanted to do the commentary as the guy that does the Ladbrokes adverts, or the old Italian commentator. I wanted to
Oh
make up
yeah,
a character. Yeah,
golazo,
literally, I
game
wanted to
on.
sit there and be like, God, 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 it's a beautiful God. Literally going nuts as like some random fake Italian bloke. But everyone else said, no, it's too cringy. We don't want to do that. But we're going to be doing it now because I don't want to do commentary anymore. So what I actually might do is I might just get an Italian bloke to do commentary. That's definitely what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure that out. We'll
There's
find out.
probably someone out there who can do it. There's probably an Italian bloke out there who could do it.
Oh yeah, no, I've got some mates that I could ring. I'll be like, look, I'm going to send you this. I need you to just talk over it like a mental Italian commentator. And when the goal goes in, go nuts. But yeah, that's that, to be honest. But that's Esteban Willian doing that. That was a donk report, and obviously we now got to move on quickly. Actually, before we do, should we talk a little bit about Esteban Willian? Because we haven't actually had a conversation about him. As you can tell, this week is completely unscripted.
What
How
compared
do you
to
feel about
all
him?
the other weeks?
Well, I mean, yeah, we don't
Um,
actually know that. You know what I mean?
mm, no, I've discussed Esteval quite a bit on my show, and um, the point I've always had about him is that I'm cautiously optimistic. Is I think the phrase I used when I spoke to Jay quite a while back now, like quite a while back. That's how long we've been waiting for Esteval to arrive. Um, I never, have questioned the potential of the talent, because how can you, based on what he's doing at a young age? I think my question has always been, how does that translate to the English game? And it's not like, the English game is superior to everything else. It's just, the history of young Brazilian talents moving to Europe and instantly hitting it off, like, and just clicking is just, it's very rare. Like, even
Yeah.
someone like Vinicius Junior, who is now heralded as an amazing player, and rightly so, like, you got to think he went through some very awkward early years at Real Madrid. And this is a very, very young person, is the thing I've always said as well. Like, this is not even a 20-year-old. This is someone who, is having to learn a new culture, a new language, and it is physically is going to be tested in ways that he probably never has before. And my big fear is actually just it's not the outside pressure, it's the inside pressure. And what I mean by that is, like, the pressure that is being placed on this guy's shoulders by Chelsea fans on the timeline. Like, this guy is being propped up as like the savior of the football club. And I just don't think that's a very healthy place to be, because if he is that, listen, all of us will be saying, hey, babe, like, literally every week. Like, it's like the Cole Palmer phenomenon, right? Like, you cannot believe you've got a player this good, and we'll all be celebrating. However, the likelihood is he will have a bit of an adaptation, and I hope that not only at the club there's an acceptance of that, but by the fans there's an acceptance of that, and people's high expectations for this guy being the Messiah can be reined in a bit. And actually, like, because Joe Tweeds was on my show a few months ago, and he asked me, like, What do you think, based on the hype, would be a realistic expectation, or what do you think people would accept as a good first season? And if you think, based on the way people have hyped this guy up, they're thinking about like Cole Palmer level. Like,
Yeah,
probably people are thinking he's got to be hitting like 20 goals a season. And I'm like, that's just the absolute insanity. Again, it's not me saying it's a negative if he does that. Obviously, it's not a negative if it's insane if he does that. But like, if he doesn't do that, that's not an abomination. That's not, oh, what have we done? Like, signing this young kid. It's like, no, you've got to give him a little bit of leeway, and hopefully he can develop into that. Like Eden Hazard, when did we buy him? Like 22, 23 years old. So quite a bit
yes,
older. And even his first year, Eden had some lovely moments in his first year where you could see undeniably the talent that was there. But to me, the Eden Hazard I think of when I think of him at Chelsea, doesn't actually start to come to fruition till his second season,
yeah,
when he bulks up a bit with Jose and he starts to become the big game player for Chelsea. Um, so, and that's like 5, 6 years older than where Esteval is now. So I really hope people are just supportive of Esteval and don't put the world on his shoulders, because it shouldn't be the world on this kid's shoulders. That's a failure of recruitment and a failure of squad building and character and just mentality and maturity within your dressing room. If it's all going down to him, it shouldn't all be down to him. It should be down to a variety of players, some of whom we already have, some of whom we will hopefully buy in the summer window.
absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's something which I do think it's the dopamine rush we do see in a lot of modern Chelsea on the timeline. It's everyone just, you see these great goals going in, everyone gets excited, but then everyone, like you're saying, builds him up far too high. And if it doesn't go right, he doesn't hit the ground running. I'm very worried about how he's going to be viewed at Chelsea. Because for me, I still feel that there is a lot of surgery needed in this squad with seniority. You talk about Vinicius Junior, right? Vinicius Junior went into a squad with Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, Karim Benzema. I could keep going. These were all names that were massive in football. Chelsea's biggest name is Cole Palmer, who's still a player who is learning. Um, and we had the comparison to PSG as well, right? Already again, PSG, Marquinhos is in that squad. Usman Dembele is in that squad. He might be young, but he's been playing since he was 16, so he's an old head on young shoulders. Gianluigi Donnarumma, a player who's been there and done it all with the Italian national team, with AC Milan, with PSG. We have, or they have those players. Chelsea do not have that quality, and that is something which worries me, especially when you look at some of the transfer rumours coming into this week. Me and you spoke about Rodrigo last week and how we thought it's not going to happen. He's not going to fit. Something's going to happen. Lo and behold, a week later, Chelsea don't want to go after Rodrigo because his wages are too much. Chelsea don't want to go after, maybe considering it's rush men, but they need to consider his wages. Chelsea, if they want to compete, and realistically, despite what's happened with Crystal Palace this year, you know, you need to spend big to win trophies. This year has been a little bit of a sort of an odd one, a year of the bird, as some people are calling it. But realistically, it is very much a case of, if you want to compete at the highest levels regularly, you need to spend the money. And the thing is, Chelsea have spent the money, but have just spent it so poorly.
Yeah, and the thing about that, right? Like, yeah, it has been great for underdogs. My hope is that Chelsea embrace the underdog spirit in Roclaw, because I got told a stat that a Spanish team has not lost a European final since like 2001. So Chelsea are actually the underdogs in Roclaw.
Why did you tell me that?
So,
Why did you tell me that? Why did you tell me that? I didn't
well,
want to
that
know
it's
that.
just no, but that's what I'm saying. Like, everyone's saying it's the year of the bird, it's the year of the team that hasn't won before. Chelsea haven't won a trophy since 2022, which by our standards is quite a long time. So you got to try and mentally change it around, or we're like the Empire, and we're the last vestige of the Empire in Star Wars, and we make sure that there is no underdog story in Roclaw. Either way, Chelsea just got to turn up on Wednesday, and they got to turn up on Sunday. The one thing I would say about that Sky report, right, and it's just the truth, right, and it ties nicely to what we're about to speak about, right? That fundamentally Chelsea's transfer ambitions cannot seriously be defined or seriously be clarified until what we find out what happens on Sunday afternoon. If Chelsea are in the Champions League, that changes. It opens the door. I'm not of the belief that it's just as simple as if we get Champions League football, we're going to sign all these incredible players. Because it only opens the door to that possibility. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It still doesn't change my skepticism on you putting those sporting directors in negotiations with these players, and them actually getting them over the line. Chelsea have got Champions League football consistently, and that hasn't always led to great transfer windows. Like, look at the transfer windows following our recent Premier League title wins. Like, they've been pretty horrendous. So it still comes down to the competence of the people, but undeniably the finance that will give us and the potential of player that can attract, hopefully, over others is huge. So in some ways, I'm with you in the sense that I'm very skeptical whenever a serious player is linked to Chelsea. What I mean by that is someone who kind of in their prime is kind of going to cost you way more than anyone else has before. And you then have to get serious with that. And the reality is, like, nearly all the targets I'm hearing, with the exception of the likes of Liam Delap and maybe some others, they're going to cost Chelsea substantial money. But that's the harsh reality. And I don't see that as I think that's a good thing. That means you're dining at a better table, and that's what Chelsea fans want. Like, you want to be signing more serious players and upgrading the squad. So yeah, really, it all comes down to this Sunday. I wanted to ask you whether, because I've heard this brought up consistently, I wrote about it on my Substack, is like people have been making the parallels of this Sunday's game to the 03 Champions League, effectively last day playoff with Liverpool in 2003. Now, I want to preface this by saying I don't think us not winning on Sunday is as quite as apocalyptic, because the backdrop to that game was potential financial sort of Armageddon, if you want to be really dramatic about it, or just like, would Roman Abramovich had even touched Chelsea if Champions League had not been secured? What would have happened to all our best players? So I'm not saying it's like that, but I do when I hear it from people, I do think it is one of the most consequential games we've had in a while, and it's undeniably the biggest game under this ownership so far by some distance.
Oh no, I agree. I agree. It's definitely not as apocalyptic. I agree with you on that. But should Chelsea fail to win, realistically, all the teams around us are going to win their games. So should Chelsea fail to do so and end up back in the Conference League, which is entirely plausible, this has been the past 3 years have been a ginormous failure. And there's simply no other way of putting it, because it is this whole project thing of we're getting better, we're doing this, we're doing that. Even if Chelsea have got a better points total than last season they were in the quote unquote Europa League spot until Manchester United won the FA Cup, which no one expected, right? Chelsea do not have. Actually, to add to that as well, not only was it a case of Chelsea were in the Europa League spots last season, comparatively this season, there's another Champions League spot. All the other teams have been worse. Mathematically, everybody has been worse. The football has been poorer. The quality of players is diminished. In terms of the quality we've seen from our players, it's not the same. Your whole portfolio, realistically, hasn't really seen growth in a lot of players. People can talk about statistics of Cole Palmer, for example, and say, well, he still created the most chances. We just need a striker. We just need this. We just need that. I think there's far more to it than that. I think the manager has done very little to win fans in the stands over, in comparison to Pochettino, who, by the way, at the end was actually doing okay with that. He'd realised something had clicked, and then he started getting involved as well, right? So all of this stuff with Chelsea at the moment, it is negative for me. I see very, 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 very few positives in this season. Unless top four is achieved and the Conference League is won. Because the Conference League, by the way, That's not well, we didn't win it. That's a bit shit. That's a bit rubbish. No, Chelsea went into that as the favourites, and Chelsea, as a club, historically, had the mentality to go and win whatever they were in. They put their best foot forward in every single competition. If Chelsea do not win that, it is a sign that the quality of everything in the club has completely fallen off the cliff. The Nottingham Forest game, realistically, this playoff shouldn't be happening. Chelsea should have seen off Brentford. Chelsea should have seen off both games against Ipswich comfortably and selected not to. Chelsea shouldn't even be in this position. This shouldn't even be a worry. And I get that football's a game of fine margins. I completely appreciate that, right? But you don't have those finer margins after 1.5 billion spent. You shouldn't.
No.
So I'm very much in the mindset of I just really am, and look, I mean, I get I might be being overcritical. I very much have lost a lot of love for Chelsea over the past couple of years. I love it because I love seeing you at games and going to the pub and the social stuff, and you watch the football and you get involved with the crowd, and that is what being a fan is to me. But the fact is that everyone in the crowd is so jaded and so tired, they need to see results. And Chelsea have not been getting the results they should be this season. It's a case of we went one way to go another. You got literally had Pochettino come in, deliver this whole mentality, this whole ethos of building players up, finally start to see it towards the end of the season of players taking accountability and really putting their best foot forward. And then we went a completely different direction with another manager. Like, completely different direction, completely different play style, completely different mentality. Pep disciple, so it's you go here, you this, you do that. No accountability in these players. I worry about going forward. I don't worry about what's happening at the end of the season now. After the season's done, this season's done. I'm now looking forward to next year, and I'm going, if Chelsea don't achieve Champions League football and Chelsea don't achieve glory in Roclaw, this has been a gargantuan failure. So despite the fact that it doesn't have the same financial apocalyptic factor that the game in 2003 had, the game in 2003 still had tremendous quality available on the pitch, tremendous players you could lean on. If Chelsea fail, it shows how far they have fallen. And that is factual. And I granted that the Premier League's become far more competitive, etc., etc., etc. But results need to happen. And this has proven, should what we both hoped doesn't happen happens, Chelsea are up shit creek without a paddle. Because their whole model has completely fallen apart.
I do think that, you know, the thing about Sunday is, right, yeah, like there will be people after if it goes wrong who will say, as you've just expressed, like fine margins, look at the points total. But, you know, I do factor in that, you know, you've got to go back to December, right? We were, I think, when we were second, we were about 6 or 7 points clear of 6th place. So there was not the biggest gap in points with still a lot of games to play, but at least a substantial gap that you kind of, I think everyone around the club at that point thought, okay, like title, we're probably not going to be good enough to sustain a title challenge, but at the very least, we can put ourselves in a position of comfort in the top 4 that I don't think many of us could have anticipated. And then that would give us hopefully a really good platform heading into next season. But, you know, the form from mid-December to March, early April was really bad. And obviously, even in this closing run, which has been, we've got to say, has been more positive than negative. There's been some big wins that have kept the season going.
Yeah.
And we've really celebrated. The Man United one, you know, really great to see the celebrations at the end. The Liverpool one, I thought, was a brilliant performance. The turnaround at Fulham was wonderful to see. However, for me, I mean, I know maybe we're sort of jumping the gun, and this is the problem, right? Because it is they're two finals in a row. It's it is fine margin swing of a pendulum, right? Of what way we look at it. And some people may think that's unfair. I mean, I don't think it is, based on where Chelsea were earlier in the season, based on, as you've expressed, how much Chelsea have spent, how long we've been going through this process. And if Chelsea win on Sunday, it's the first tangible sign of progress under the ownership, like that. Or just, I know to a lot of people, yeah, we should be in the Champions League as a minimum, right? But at the very least, we can say, okay, we've achieved the objective of this. One of the objectives, the main objective of the season, was returning to the Champions League. We've done
Yeah.
that. What it also does is it stops the conversation of, should we have changed head coach in some way? Because, if we don't win on Sunday, and we don't, which then very, very likely means we don't get Champions League football, I think myself and others and many will turn around and go, what was the point in changing head coach in the first place? Because surely the justification for changing head coach is you move forward a year later, because you want to get better. If you haven't got better, which is moving from, it could be a case where we finish sixth again. That's not progress. No one, again, you can do all the mental gymnastics you want. To most people, that will not be seen as a success, and that's the reality. So yeah, it's tough, right? Because it is, in a matter of a couple of days, the whole complexion of the season will be looked at in potentially extreme ways. I guess the one source of comfort is it is in our hands, in the sense of, well, both, but especially the Champions League. It is another one of these. It's kind of what I said to you, Louis, pre Liverpool, right? I said to you that nothing on evidence really gives me overwhelming confidence Chelsea are going to win this game.
No.
In that sense, it was the record against big teams. It was the record against elite rivals, teams who would either, won the Premier League title, were competing for the Premier League title, and Chelsea hadn't beaten one of those teams for a very long period of time, but they did, and we were very joyous about that. In this case, it's the away form. Chelsea have not. It's been horrendous away from home.
One away win in the Premier League since December.
One wins since Spurs. That was and the only other one, of course, is the Fulham one, which was about 5 minutes away from being another defeat, or being another failure to win. So on record, on form, like there's and the way I think Chelsea started against Newcastle was very concerning. I think psychologically I have big questions of how this team is being set up, and how they look so unprepared for that Newcastle game. Like, how did they not know there was going to be some form of an onslaught at the start at St James's Park? That's just horrendous to me, really amateur hour. And because this is the biggest Nottingham Forest game, like their fans probably cannot believe that they are potentially one win away from Champions League football. So Chelsea have got to be psychologically ready, as they should be in Roclaw as well. Like, it's not, the mentality in Roclaw has to be as big as this game for me. Because Real Betis are not Drew Gordon, they're not Noah. Like, they're not only a quality La Liga side, they're also a side that are going to be there to win on a big occasion for them. But Forest have been struggling recently. Chelsea have shown a capacity, when the stakes have been high, to show up in recent weeks. I think we have to say that, based on very recent evidence.
Yeah.
And Chelsea have quality within their ranks, I think, to hurt Nottingham Forest. So that's kind of, again, that's why it is frustrating. It's come down to a series of playoffs. It should have never come down to a series of playoffs. I do just want to say, Louis, maybe again, if it goes negative, we'll post-mortem this after. But to me, the thing that cost Chelsea this season, and the way I will look at it, it's not the Liam Delap penalty against Ipswich, which I'm still hearing people bring up. And I just roll my eyes every time I hear it, as if that was like the thing that cost Chelsea, was that we didn't get that penalty, or we were, the referee screwed us away to Ipswich. It's not to do with maybe even a series of misses. It isn't to do with the fans, maybe, being negative at times. What has cost Chelsea undeniably this season, not even injuries, because our injury situation has not even been that bad comparative to recent years, it was the summer window. The summer window was the worst thing. And what really clarified it for me, why the summer window has effed Chelsea this year if they don't get Champions League football, I put out like an end of season awards poll, and I went to put like who the best signing was. And I put 3 options: Pedro Neto, Tosin, and Jadon Sancho, I think was the other one I put in. But I was walking the other day and I sort of thought to myself, like, has any of the new signings been like our best player, been strong players for us, have tangibly improved what was there last year? And the answer that came back for me was no. Like, none of those signings have made the squad better or individually been some of the best players. Nearly all of the individuals who we herald as being positive this year are ones that were bought either 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Cucurella was bought in 2022, the first window. Caicedo was bought in 2023. Enzo Fernandez was bought in 2023. Cole Palmer was bought in 2023. Noni Madueke was bought in 2023. That summer was abysmal. It was unacceptable. And I will be mainly, if I'm like ranking what went wrong for Chelsea, why they didn't get Champions League football, I will be looking at that summer where our squad objectively was made weaker. And that is why we've fallen short
Yeah,
of Champions League qualification.
yeah.
And we know
Agreed.
who's responsible for that, obviously.
Agreed. And with that, I look. This is what I'm saying. Like, I spoke about how I'm unimpressed by Maresca. I've always been unimpressed by these sporting directors. And should they fail, or should Chelsea fail to achieve the goals set out within their windows, by the way, again, we said this all the way through August. All the way through August, we're bang on about they said this amount of windows, they've had this amount of windows. If Chelsea fail to achieve their goals that they set out, they need to go. They need to be out the door. They should already, quite frankly, have their stuff boxed up in case they need to get booted out. Because it is, quite frankly, Winstanley and Stewart are absolute clowns, absolute disgrace. So that the fact that they are in charge of Chelsea's transfer policy, because like I've said in the past, right, I've been nice in the past where I've gone, quite frankly, they're probably good at certain things that they do, right? I've no doubt that Lawrence Stewart is a great multi-club model guy. He was great at Monaco, right? Paul Winstanley, on the other hand, don't know how he's got that job. Never will, ever. Because everything I hear from people within football clubs, whether that be Preston, whether that be Wigan, whether that be Brighton, whether that be Chelsea, everybody laughs at him because he's an absolute embarrassment. And apparently just a massive kiss ass, which is why he's in the result position he's in, right? And he's playing the politics. Fair play if that's how you want to do it. But if it means that the results aren't done and everything isn't sorted, it needs to be out the door, as does Lawrence Stewart. And with that, by the way, should Chelsea fail to get any of this, as does Enzo Maresca. Getting a competent manager, getting a competent sporting director. They missed out on Luis Campos, who's just signed a new deal with PSG. They missed out on Luis Enrique. They missed, even though I didn't want him, by the way, I will say that. I wasn't a fan of him, but you've seen what they're doing at PSG together. Fantastic. They missed out on Nagelsmann. They messed up with Thomas Tuchel. The list goes on. It goes on and 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 on. If Chelsea fail to hit their targets this season, they need to be out the door, completely dismantled. Their office needs to be gone. I don't want a trace of them at the football club because they're absolutely embarrassing. Because that window, and then by the way, the January window, when you talked about how comfortable we were, where they could have strengthened, they opted not to do so, despite the fact that the manager, to his credit, asked for help. He asked for players, as did Pochettino, as did Graham Potter, as did Thomas Tuchel, as did Frank Lampard when he was in his interim by saying what Chelsea needed. All of them have said the same thing, yet none of them have been listened to. If you have 5 different managers, all of which have different play styles and different mentalities brought to the table and different styles of doing things, if they all say the same thing, you should be listening to them. It's 5 different people who have been in the game a long time. I don't get it, but that's another conversation for another day. We'll probably save it. As you can tell, I'm not very happy with Chelsea a minute, but we probably should just move on to this Nottingham Forest game, Dan. Let's jump straight into the Echo 11, straight off the bat. I mean, goalkeeper Robert Sanchez, I think it's forgiven. That he's actually shot someone's improved, and I do think that he's going to have a busy day against Chris Wood and Callum Hudson-Odoi and Alanga. Obviously, I think we're all going to step up, as will Morgan Gibbs-White. You've then, of course, got the back line. Marc Cucurella as a given. Reece James, I think, is going to stay at right back. Personally, I'd like to see that. Your middle pairing.
Here's a big question. Can I just say, because I think obviously it relates to the right back. I mean, we could arguably talk about this when we get to central midfield. but I tweeted this out. Lavia can't play the Conference League final. So he kind of has to start on Sunday. Like, if he's not starting on Sunday, what are we doing? Because it's not like trying to save him for Rocklaw, because he can't play in that game. So then you have a big question, right? After what happened last week with Reece James basically saving us with that right foot of his. You play Reece James. I don't know why Reece James, Moises Caicedo, and Romeo Lavia can't all play in the same 11. I just think it sounds a little bit pseudo-intellectual to me to say, to try and come up with reasons why they can't.
Oh, it is.
However, it does objectively have a knock-on effect further up the pitch. But given how that front three didn't really work when it started against Man United, I still don't know in a big game like this why you can't have Lavia, you can't even have Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, all of them playing together in central midfield, and then you push Palmer up a little bit further. But I don't. That's the one thing I just wanted to bring up, right? Because it is a conversation point that maybe people haven't brought up. Is like maybe people assume that Lavia can play against Betis, but he can't.
Well, in fairness, by the end of the game, Cole Palmer was playing as a false nine further up the pitch, and that was what I was going to pitch. Because I'd love to see Tariq George, obviously. I think realistically we might be seeing Pedro Neto, but given the situation, I agree with you. I think for me, the team goes Robert Sanchez in goal, Cucurella left back, Reece James right back, Trevor Colwill as the two centre halves, Lavia and Caicedo as a double pivot, Enzo further forward. Then got Cole Palmer on the right or in the middle with Pedro Neto, same position. You know, it's kind of switchable as to who goes where out of those two. And then you got Noni on the left hand side. That's my team. I think that's the best team, and that's what we saw by the end of that United game. Because even though Cole kind of did get lost a little bit, that was the best balance. So I don't know why that's not been thought of. The fact that's another thing, by the way, about Chelsea season. We made that game look difficult. You questioned who was going for Champions League football, but again, another conversation for another day. Just another example of Chelsea and how poor they've been in those games this season. Are you happy with that team, Dan?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it is. I suspect that Nicholas Jackson will come back for the Conference League final.
Yeah.
I think because it is a short turnaround, I think he will play a centre forward in Rocklaw, and hopefully for his sake and for our sake, he can make up for it. I mean, it's going to be tough if Chelsea don't get Champions League football. I don't know if. I think for listen, if he scores a winning goal in a cup final, I think it's hard for anyone to kind of turn around and go, I still don't forgive you. But obviously, it's not the best situation. I know Nkunku and Mark Guillot are likely to be on the bench. I mean, what a wild scenario, what a football scenario it would be, and a typical Chelsea scenario it would be if either of those two players came off the bench and had a massive positive influence. More so Nkunku. Narratively, I just would find it quite hilarious if Nkunku ends up being like Chelsea's saviour right at the end. And then we have to have conversations about like, does Nkunku actually need to leave now? Because there'll be a lot of people. I know how we know how football works, right? Arguably it's fickle, right? But a lot of people, if Nkunku ends up scoring like a huge goal off the bench for Chelsea, that gets us Champions League football, suddenly I'm trying to manifest anything here, right? Like just manifest Chelsea winning this game somehow. I don't care who does it. I don't give a shit if Tosin is the one who takes a shot from distance like he did against Morecambe, put it in the bottom corner. But I did find that quite funny, right? Like that there's at this late stage of the season, maybe one of those two players can step up and score a big goal. But I can't see anything other than as you've said that lineup, right? You've got to start Lavia. Reece will want to start a huge game. That then does beg the question whether Reece starts in Rocklaw, because we just haven't tended to play him two games back to back. It has not happened. I'm sure he would like to play two games back to back, but
I think
that
he
in
could.
itself is obviously a huge question.
I think he definitely could. Whether or not he finishes both of them is another question. But I think there's lots to think about Chelsea. I mean, look, Christopher Nkunku, I didn't even put him in the 11 because I was thinking that game was just not going to play. He's just not going to play, despite the fact that he is the person. He's someone who can score goals. So you'd adjust the system to have your best players playing, right? Would you not? That's what I don't get. This like you said, pseudo intellectual necessity for Enzo Maresca to behave like he's the smartest man in the room and no one understands him. When realistically, it is just simple. Do you know why Nottingham Forest done well this season? Simple football. It's not inversions and we're going to do this and this and look at this. Oh, look how smart this is. It's no. We have really good wingers. We have a strong centre forward. We're going to get the ball down the line. We're going to keep ourselves strong defensively, and that's where we're going to get to. End of discussion. Done. Yeah, it's yeah. Do you know what? It might not win you a league title if you're not in the Forest. It might not be something which is going to be uh, guaranteeing the sexiest football, but it's guaranteeing results. And the difference between this us
Mm.
and them is their results still include goals, and their results still include getting some semblance of just basic football thought processes just out into the ether. They're out there, and it keeps things simple, and you can see it with the players that they use and how those players are behaving. And the fact, by the way, that Nuno is sitting there and saying, "Well, we were targeting Champions League football this season, and they're still on their way there," with the amount of investment that they've put into that club. You look at almost because we were in similar paths, right? You look at how heavily Nottingham Forest invested when they came up, and you look at how heavily Chelsea invested, when the ownership took over, because it was the same year, and sort of how things have gradually grown, right? You want to talk about progress? Look at Forest progress. Look at Chelsea's. It's there for everyone to see. Now we could be having a different conversation in 12 months' time. Nottingham Forest could maybe not be able to deal with Champions League football or European football in general, and they're sat right down the bottom end of the table again, and things are going wrong for them, yada yada yada. Or they're going to be in a stronger position and have got more money and more revenue yet again from the fact that they've been competing and be in that position yet again where they are chasing Champions League football. If that is the case, then they are the model. They're doing the things right. And despite the fact that he's an absolute loony bin, I'd love to have had their own charge of Chelsea, because I tell you what, he actually cares. I just Egg Barley. I just don't really care. It's a business thing for them.
Well,
And
I think the thing about Forest is kind of on a base level, because I've seen people like argue, well, their style of football and they're kind of in ways they've overperformed to kind of expect, not just expectation, but like XG and stuff this year. But I think that the one thing you can say is just that they've outperformed expectation, and they have given their fans a ride, a joyous ride. There is obviously a different there is a different culture at those two clubs, right? You can't act like Forest or just like Chelsea in terms of every,
oh no, I'm not.
even
I'm not.
clubs like, no, I'm not saying you are. It's just, I think when people talk about like the Forest atmosphere, for instance, compared to Chelsea, like Nottingham Forest they were in the Championship for a long period of time. That was a club that suffered with a lot of hurt, a lot of bad ownership, and a lot of bad decision making. And they've been on this wild ride since 2022 when they got promoted back to the Premier League. They spent a lot and they just survived to stabilize themselves. And now like they've been on this incredible ride where they're going to get, you think, some form of European football next season, which probably to their fans, even last season, probably felt still like a long way away. And I think that's like a core thing with Chelsea is like, I don't think whatever comes out of the club, we're not overachieving. We're not. If Chelsea had finished second or third, then I think you obviously can make a more logical, like what we were doing in like earlier in the season. Like I think everyone was sort of sitting there and going, none of us expected that. I predicted, and everyone, people call me negative, right? My preseason prediction was fifth, which at the time, and now we know, gets Chelsea Champions League football. So I'm not retroactively going back and saying fifth is a failure after I predicted us to
No,
finish
of course.
10th. I literally predicted us in August to finish fifth.
Yeah. So,
So to me, getting Champions League football has always been the aim. So you getting Champions League football is not, I don't see it as the greatest thing ever. Oh my God, we've blown all expectations out the water. Like I don't think any logical mind can seriously come to that conclusion. And if we fall short, what I don't want to hear is a hard luck story about Chelsea. I don't want to hear, if only, all we need is another year and, a really, tough go. Like we got screwed over by a penalty in late December. As if like, again, the Delap penalty, like it's such a great example of, I've just consistently used this word, the gaslighting about this season. Like it was a bad call, but that was very early into a game that Chelsea then had about, I don't know, 90 plus minutes to respond to in that game. And they didn't, because the goal came quite early, if I remember rightly, in that game.
You did.
Then we had another chance over 90 minutes at home to beat Ipswich, and we couldn't do it. And you look at how many games, just if they went in a different direction earlier in the season, especially since January, if Chelsea had won even one of those games, how different the complexion would have looked going into this final fixture. So, yeah, I guess this is probably what a lot of fans are feeling, right? Like it's on a knife edge, and all we can hope is that the mentality and the performance of the players and the coach is at the level that it was against Liverpool. Even the level it was, I know for a lot of that Man United game it was poor, but I thought the way we handled ourselves post scoring, I thought was good, because I think we shut it down. Like there was no. Previous Chelsea teams have been really bad at keeping leads like that. That was one of the biggest problems with Poch, right? That our game management at times was quite horrendous.
Yeah.
I do think one of the positives about Maresca going into these final two games is I think if Chelsea get in the lead, I have more confidence Chelsea will be able to maintain that lead, which at this stage of the season, as we saw in the Europa League final, how big of an attribute that can be in these like really tight games. Just being able to shut a game down, which both me and our favorite manager, right? Like that was his trademark. That was his bread and butter. Like that was the thing that became known about Chelsea, is that they would suffocate you. They would shut the game down, and we're going to rile you up. It's the thing that Arsenal fans came to absolutely despise about Chelsea, but we loved about it, was that we could go to these tough away grounds. We're not interested in playing beautiful football. We're interested in winning, and that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
That tendency of Maresca in the Spurs home game, the Liverpool home game, and the United home game, I think are good things in terms of I'd like to see that be built upon more. Is that he seems to know, because we say it as a negative, right, or criticism, that control is kind of it's a frustration of like our build up of being, sort of an engaging football team, but actually the control element of him as a coach comes into effect in a positive way when we need to defend a game. That's something that is probably the positive of his controlling aspect as a coach, is he then knows that's kind of his strength, right? That's where you flip it around and you go, well, that's where it can be a strength.
It
Obviously,
is.
you need to get in front in the first place.
It is, but I also think he does the whole thing. Is sitting on 1-0 leads. It just doesn't work. It's not feasible long term. And I do
It
think
isn't,
that's something which it needs to be worked on.
It's at this stage of the season, and like the way you'd want to play this, right, is if you can, is to force Forest to come out, because Forest need to win. And Forest don't want to play a game where they have to take control of the ball. That's not how they play football. Their whole thing is about sitting deep, wanting to hit on transition. And I like the fact that Chelsea adapted in the Liverpool game. And they were able to play on transition a lot. We've talked all season, haven't we, about how much we love Chelsea as a transitional team. We see the benefit of it because of the ability of the players and the makeup of the players we have. This is the perfect time to do it. Everyone thinks that in this game Chelsea are going to hold all of the ball and Forest are just going to sit back and counter. There is going to be a point where Forest are going to have to come at Chelsea, and I'd be trying to play on that. I'd be trying to force them to do something that is kind of out of what Nuno wants to do. And their crowd will be urging them on to attack as well. It's just Chelsea have got to be ready for that period and then be able to capitalize on it. So it's going to be a tight game. Like it's a final. That's what it is. You've got to think of it as like a final, like Roclaw.
Which is why I'm so stressed about it and so angry.
Yeah, but I kind of think that if Maresca is able to bring what he's done in other big games recently, the one negative being the exception and the more reliable kind of example is away from home in a big game, and that obviously in that aspect, there's nothing to show that we're gonna win on Sunday. Unfortunately, like that's the evidence. Like away from Stamford Bridge, like we can't seem to replicate the same game. So that's the big question. Can Maresca find what has worked at Stamford Bridge and make it work away from home? Because he kind of has to.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see, guys. Obviously, this has been your preview of Chelsea's trip to Nottingham Forest. It's the final game of the Premier League season. Dan's right. We've got to see what happens in this game. I am obviously very negative about it, and I'm not going to lie. I'm just not a massive fan of Maresca, and I'm not a massive fan of Chelsea at the minute. It's really starting to grind my gears. And hopefully, I can be sitting here in a week's time when Dan and I are doing our season review, and I'm a completely different person because Chelsea have gone and got the job done. And if anything, I'm quite sheepish in comparison to this week because they've done exactly that. But this has been the Chelsea Echo. If you have enjoyed this show, please do make sure that you give us a like and subscribe if you're watching it on YouTube. If you are not watching on YouTube and you're listening to it on all good podcast platforms, make sure that you give us a cheeky little follow and give us a 5-star review. It really does help the pod out. If you want to get involved in the show as well, please do make sure that you follow us on our Twitter account, obviously at the Chelsea Echo on X. And of course, if you want to get involved even more on X, make sure you tune into Final Score with the score straight after the game to give the score all your thoughts around Chelsea's trip to Nottingham Forest. But I have been Louis. That has been Dan. This has been the Chelsea Echo. There we go. Let's do that again. Hang on. I've been Louis.
Take two. I've been Dan.
Right, take 3. Right, hang on. I've been Louis.
I've been Louis.
For fuck's sake! I've been Dan. That's been Louis. This has been the Chelsea Echo. And we will see you for the next preview. Ta-da.